Peah, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Gimel. I want to dedicate this learning to the memory of my father, Harav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. And as tonight is Yom HaShoah, we should dedicate our learning also to the memory of those who are not able to learn Mishnah. Okay, we're in the middle of learning about whether a harvest is considered one harvest or two harvests for the purpose of Peah. Okay, last we talked about somebody who harvested in different spots, and when a person did that on purpose, that was considered a specific, separate harvest for the purpose of Peah. So the Mishnah continues. What happens if I don't have two different, kinds of produce, like mustard seeds or dill, but rather I have one produce, but I want to separate it for two different harvests, for two different purposes? Says the Mishnah, Hamachlik bitzalim lachim lashuk u'makayem yiveshim lagoren. So I have onions. I have an onion field. But I'm going to take the onions. I'm going to do two things with them. One, I'm going to take the fresh onions and I'm going to sell them in the shuk, in the market. That's machlik. Machlik from chalak. It's smooth out the field. I harvest the field. Bitzalim lachim lashuk, right? I take out the fresh onions and I'm going to sell them right now. And then, but I leave the dry ones. I leave the rest of them to dry out, because when they dry out, when the onions dry out, then I'm going to put them in the goren, in the storehouse. So if you recall, Mishnah, one of the earliest Mishnah said that what's chayav in Peah? You're only chayav in Peah something that you're machnis lagoren, something that you're going to place in the storehouse. That's something that has kiyum. It's going to last for a while. Here we're talking about onions, the bizalim lachim. These are vegetables that, because he picked them early, because they're fresh, they would rot. They would not survive. They would not be able to be stored. Nonetheless, because if you left them dry, they would go to the goren. Therefore, they're all chayav in Peah. Okay, so you have essentially two harvests of the same field. Says the Mishnah, Notein Peah le'elu le'atzmam, u'le'elu le'atzmam. So you get Peah on these on their own, and these on their own. V'chein ba'afunim, same as with peas. V'chein b'kerem. And the same is true if you would do the same thing for peas. Obviously, you're going to sell some peas wet, some peas fresh in the market, delicious, and some you're going to dry out and serve as split peas. Okay, to make soup. V'chein b'kerem, same thing is true if I would do for grapes. I want to go sell some of the grapes in my field in the grocery store, but then I want to save some of them for raisins. I want to save some of them for wine. So the same thing would be true. Each one is considered a separate harvest for the purposes of Peah. Hameidel. So if we're going to first learn this second part of the Mishnah according to the Bartanura. Okay, what's Hameidel? The Bartanura says Hameidel is, one second, Bizman sha'abitzalim zroim etzufim. If there, let's say he says you plant, and you planted some of the produce too close together. So what you would do is you would remove some of the produce in order to give the rest of the produce room. Says the Bartanura, you want the other produce to grow well. You're trying to grow the most beautiful onions in the world. You want to give them space. So meidel means you smooth out, you pull out. He says, you're pulling them out, you take them out. The Google says sholef means to pull out. Very good. Okay, so Hameidel, we're going to learn this Mishnah according to the Bartanura, and then we're going to see the Rambam. Hameidel, if you are Meidel, if you pull out fruits in produce, like onions from in between, Notein mina mishoar al masha shier. Okay, so you would give mishoar from what's left, only for what's left. Meaning, sure, I pulled out some onions and I sold them, I ate them, I did whatever I did, but that's considered be'akrai. That's not considered a part of the regular harvest. So therefore, that first pulling, the first uprooting of those vegetables, they are not chayav in Peah. So therefore, you give mina mishoar al masha shier, only on what's left. Okay, but v'machlik me'achat yad. But on the other hand, if you would smooth away, machlik, clear out me'achat yad from one place, from one side, noten mina mishoar al hakol. Then you would give what's left, i.e., I pulled out half, and then when I pull out the other half, then I have to leave enough Peah for everything that I took off. Okay, that's exactly what Kahati said. What the Bartanura says. Kolomar me'achat yad, from one place, o kula lagoren, o kula lashuk. If I'm going to take them all off and take them all to the goren, to the shuk, then I have to give what's left. When I leave my Peah from what's left, I have to take it on everything. And if you'll notice, the Bartanura says, v'habambam perush me'achat yad mimakom echad. We're going to see the Rambam has a very different interpretation. Let's look at the Rambam for a second. The Rambam says in Mahilchot Matnot Aniyim Perek Bet Halacha Vav, the Rambam says this whole Mishnah of this Meidel, he learns it in a totally different way. If you recall, in our Mishnah, we said, V'chein v'afunim, v'chein b'kerem. So the Kati says that some have a Girsah of the Rambam, a version, U b'kerem, that this is an introduction, V'chein b'kerem, ha-meidel notim min ha-meshorah masha she'er. The Rambam learns this whole idea, but meidel about the kerem. The Rambam says, Kerem she'ya botzer mimenu adav nimikor bashuk. So he says this idea: if you have a vineyard that you take some grapes for the market, so he says the following: the rest was for the gat, was for the wine press. If I'm taking for the shuk from all over, then what's left over, he says, those are two separate harvests. But if I take it from one direction, so you have to give Peah on everything. But if I took from the shuk from one direction only, okay, but if I took from one side of the kerem only, meaning I started on one side and then didn't start on the other and then went to the next side, then I have to take for everything. Why? He explains. Since I only take from one side, so let's look back at the Mishnah and see how the Rambam explains it. Hamedel, he says, if I take from in the kerem from different areas from within the kerem, then I only give on what's left, because the Rambam says, because if I'm just picking from grapes here, grapes there in the entire vineyard, that's considered a temporary harvest, or not a permanent harvest, and therefore that first harvest is not for Peah. But hamachlik me'achat yad, says the Rambam, but if I take grapes from only one side, then I have to give al hakol. So the Rambam explains this whole second part of the Mishnah that's talking about a kerem, where the Bartanura says, no, this second part of the Mishnah is talking about not a kerem, it's talking, Meidel is talking about the regular onion field or whatever field itself. Okay, I hope this wasn't too confusing. If you have any comments or questions, got a question today from an email from somewhere in America. It was great. Contact me, rspolter@gmail.com. Have a great day.